Namaskar and welcome to NatStrat Conversations. My name is Pankaj Saran and I welcome you once again to another fresh episode of NatStrat Conversations. The inauguration of President Donald Trump a few weeks ago in Washington, D.C. has unleashed forces and headlines which were least expected, and it is literally a storm that is taking over the entire world, especially in the strategic areas. To discuss the implications of a Trump administration, what led to the advent of the Trump administration, its implications for India US relations, and indeed for the globe. I have with me a very special guest, someone who could not have had a better insight into what is going on and who will walk us through how he sees all these big changes that are taking place. Ambassador Taranjit Sandhu is a veteran Indian diplomat. He's had the unique distinction of having served many times in the United States, one of the few Foreign Service officers to have had this opportunity. Most recently, he was India's ambassador there for a long time. He's also had the privilege of having served in the first Trump administration as well as in the Biden administration. So he knows people in both administrations. He has served there. He has tested the grounds. And of late, of course, Ambassador Sandhu has joined politics. He was in the election fray in Amritsar in the general elections in 2024. So there is a transformation or a switch in his career from being a professional diplomat to being a public personality. So he has a good perspective on not just diplomacy, but also on public policy. So to begin this conversation, let me first welcome Taranjit, Ambassador Sandhu. Taranjit, great pleasure to have you on NatStrat Conversations, and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Pankaj. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. And I must say that I am quite in awe. Right from, I still remember the year 1994, way back. And I also recall, as you rightly said, that I had the lucky opportunities of going to United States. Not that they were all planned and intended, but when I went the first time in 1997, I remember getting a good briefing from you and Preeti, especially about Washington.
Thank you, Terry. It's great to have you on our show, and thanks for taking time. I know that in your new avatar of a public personality, time is not on your side. You're torn in different directions, and including in Punjab and so on and so forth. So thanks a lot for taking time out. So I think what we will do is I want to begin by asking you about what you make out of the victory of Donald Trump. What does it mean and what does it say for US domestic politics? What is this Trump phenomenon? You served there for so many years, through so many administrations. So before we come to the bilateral and the foreign policy side, a little bit about the internal situation and what threw up Donald Trump as a person, as a president, as a leader.
So I think, Pankaj, this is a very interesting facet, and somewhere in our analysis, we tend to miss out on what exactly propelled Trump 2.0, as we say it.
Correct.
And I think that's very, very significant. If we want to understand his acts or his orders or his executive orders, actually it will all bring it back to his election, his victory. So I would, if one word I have to say, I would say his resurgence was essentially domestic. And in the domestic, if I can bring out three things. Firstly, domestic economy. You know, again, these are perceptions and they can always be relative. So one may see it from here and say, well, the conditions in the United States are so much better. But, you know, the COVID, it had an economic impact, and the cost of living, as we say, it was bothering the people, bothering the people at large numbers. And when I say cost of living, I would broadly point to what we call the gas prices there, which are oil prices, which affect the common man. Uh, Actually, what are daily use items? Bread, butter, things like that, milk. If you actually go
Yeah.
to a store in United States, you will see the cost. Now, that is what the people in their perception believe, and I'm just keeping it general, that they believed that Donald Trump is someone who perhaps they can rely upon. Now, your obvious question will be why?
Yeah.
Why Donald Trump? He had been earlier. So I will point out to the assassination attempt on him. People tend to forget. You know, when a bullet is fired and it gets so close to you, your first tendency is to actually uh, take care of yourself. You
Correct.
really don't know what has hit you. But if you look at those pictures,
Yeah.
I think those pictures helped him a great deal. It built that belief that here is someone who will stand up and stand up for you. The third issue, which is again closely linked, is the issue of law and order, crime, immigration, and deportations. Now, I brought it all together. Now, if you will look how he finally is coming out now, it can be. Look, we can only explain. I'm not getting into whether it's justified or is it not. That is for the Americans to decide.
Correct.
But I would say that in my analysis, it was the domestic issues, and Trump was smart enough to actually touch upon the issues which were touching the people. So here is a very interesting case where you have had common people voting, working class voting, and also many of the rich supporting.
So that's very interesting to begin with. I mean, in addition to all of this, I mean, it was one of the greatest political comebacks in contemporary U.S. history, wasn't it? Given what he was up against with the Biden administration and the cases and the whole witch hunt, if one can use that word, against him, and then to bounce back with this overwhelming majority.
So, Pankaj, the politics, the water never is still. It's always moving. So, my own opinion may be something X or Y, but I think there's no doubt that Trump was a very smart politician and he was able to pick up these issues and bring it in front.
Correct.
So, definitely, it's a great comeback. Now, if you ask me that would Democrats have had a chance, it's debatable. There are a number of things which could have happened, the candidates, etc., etc. But I think what is significant in this is that he was very smart in picking up the issues which were touching the people. And I think that has played quite a major role in bringing him back.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, he touched the right nerves of the people and he united all sections of people to actually vote for him and to control the Congress, the Senate, and everything. It's quite something. And he's come back as a different person than he was in the first term. You was with him in the first term, you've seen him, and we are seeing him now. It looks as if 1 week is too long in politics, and this adage is being proved in some sense. I mean, he looks to be in a man in a hurry. Every day is a day of decisions, of disruption. Does it fit into your expectations of how he would behave in
So,
his second term?
there is one way of looking and there is another way of looking. I prefer to take the other way because I think in this uncertainty and unpredictability, there is a strategy. As you have seen, almost 80% of the things have gone through
Yeah.
this. Now, of course, that doesn't mean will he get tested? Certainly. Somewhere along, uh, some great powers and great powers within courts
Yeah.
will certainly test him. But that is to come. I think right now, and here again, I think certainly President Trump has learnt over time. So this time the preparation has been much more, especially of putting people
Yeah.
in positions.
Yeah.
And there again, you see, it's a combination. Now, I'm sure somewhere we'll get along on issue of the ex-owner Musk.
Yeah.
But there is a political role Musk is also playing. Threatening many of the congressmen and senators that they'll be primaried. And in the US system, primary is actually that you are financially supporting, putting up a candidate.
Correct.
Now, he's playing that role. So it's not just limited to business. So I would say, and since you have mentioned, I had an exposure in my initial stint when I had gone there. President Trump was there. I presented my credentials to him, brought him to Ahmedabad. And one thing I clearly remember that, at that time he was coming to Ahmedabad, that India visit in 2020. And when I met him, he, out of the blue, said that, it's very difficult to go out of United States right now because these guys and, later many of those guys became my friends. Those were his NSA and his chief of staff, that they are pressing him. Elections are near, so you need to focus. So, like typical President Trump, he said, I have a offer. I know you want me to go to 2 cities, do 2 days. I will offer you 3 days and 3 cities in November. But despite having that, I think some of the issues which one was able to bring to his attention got him attracted to coming. And if you see, even now when he met Prime Minister Modi, he remembered that civic reception in Ahmedabad.
Yes.
He brought it up.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
if he says something, doesn't mean that's the final. That may be also just a strategy. And therefore, one needs to understand that and take it in stride.
No, but that's interesting because that behind all this, what we are seeing, the bluster and the and the headlines is a strategy, clearly. And one of them, of course, the bottom line is this whole mission to rediscover and re-empower America and to make it great again and America first and so on. And these are very early days. But I presume everything you're saying means that all of this, what we are seeing, which is going on in these last few weeks, is geared to that objective.
So, Pankaj, let me slightly clarify here. Again, I'm not getting into the merits of the strategy.
Sure.
Sure. All I'm saying is that in order to understand better that there is certainly a strategy which is working. And actually, in my understanding, I'm quite clear that it is focused on his domestic audience. And what I've told you, economy, law and order, better living, it's aimed at that. Now, whether it brings about that or not, that time will tell.
True. I understand that. But I was very interested by your anecdote about meeting him. But anything else that struck you as about him as an individual, as a human being?
So I couldn't add there, but I have 2 very interesting observations of my interaction in 2020 February before he was to come.
Yeah.
So when he mentioned that, obviously there was certain pressure on him, but very quickly I brought to his attention that the Prime Minister is actually personally devoting his interest in holding that civic reception in Ahmedabad. So when
largest ever.
Yeah. So when I said Ahmedabad, he immediately said, Modi hometown. So I'm telling you that he's pretty well briefed.
Yeah.
Very well briefed.
Yeah.
And when I said that civic reception, there are going to be 130,000 people inside and almost the same outside. So he immediately said that world's biggest cricket stadium. Okay. And of course, he was very curious to know how those. So numbers mattered.
Correct.
That
Correct.
So all I'm trying to say is that he's a person of detail. And finally, when I was leaving, he said, "By the way, Ambassador, did you notice that your turban and my tie are matching?" Honestly, I had not noticed at that
Wow.
time. And later when I checked out, yes, they were. So he's a person of
He's a
very
people's-
sharp.
Yeah.
He watches very carefully.
Yeah. How much of his background as a real estate magnate, a businessman, influences the way he looks at the world, actually? He's hardly a diplomat. I mean, he is a hardcore, hard-nosed businessman in some, to a great extent.
So definitely he has that exposure. And because he is coming from outside, and as far as United States is concerned, it's always popular that outside the beltway,
Yes.
you always score with that, and he has scored full points on that.
Yeah.
But as you have indicated that, again, he's sharp, he picks up. Is he a person of all details? I think that's where the team plays a very crucial role. And that's where I think it was important for Prime Minister to meet him early. Of course, we'll come to that.
We'll come to
later.
that, yeah.
But I think, like everybody else, he has many dimensions. And it's important that we understand those dimensions and the win-win situation. Because like a businessman, he would like to get into what we call as a win-win situation where both sides. I mean, as the Prime Minister indicated that, look, he looks after his national interests and I look after my national interests. Absolutely fair.
Correct.
So from his perspective and from his perception, at this moment, he's trying to do things which he feels will help United States and particularly the vast electorate which has elected him.
And he also seems to be completely overturning everything that the Biden administration was doing domestically or what stood for in terms of values, in terms of America's own interests. I mean, that's the impression one gets. Do you look at it that way, or because you've served in both?
I think, Pankaj, that has a bit of a political side to it. And I mean, I am nobody to say that is he throwing everything to the sea? Not necessarily. Sometimes some labels are thrown and we tend to see that. But I think the core interest is where he perceives that this should be the America's interest. And it's too early still. I think sometimes it may be also part of the overall strategy to achieve something. And if X has not been achieved, then perhaps another way is found. So maybe it's part of that. I mean, I would not go whole stretch to get political and say that it's... but right now you are right. I mean, everything what is he's saying is he adds that word.
Yeah, it looks actually that it is more than just stylistic changes. I mean, to some extent on some issues it looks like a rupture or a fundamentally different ideological positions.
Yeah, that I think, as a candidate, he took a position there. And he said that this is wrong in his perception, and therefore he will do this way. So I think certainly there is a difference, a major difference between the approaches.
Also, like you said, I mean, other big difference from his Trump 1.0 to 2.0 is the people. Today he has his team in place from day one. In fact, from day -1. Whereas in Trump 1.0, one of the big problems he faced was the absence of, let's say, a stable team. There was so much turnover.
That's true, Pankaj. That's very true. But I will only add that you understand US politics and challenges don't disappear. I think the confirmations of some of the cabinet members, and they have been pretty close,
Yeah.
even going to 50
Yeah.
with the vice president
Yeah.
voting. And just today we have had Cash getting
Yeah.
51.
Yeah.
Definitely he knew. And President Trump took that gamble and he has got his names through.
Correct.
But nevertheless, it's a close contest. And there is a congressional election coming in 2026. So that part will also play. So therefore, he has a certain window. And especially before the 2026 elections are held. And perhaps that's what he has picked up from his last stint, that some of these actions need to be started quickly.
Yeah.
And I think he's wiser by that, if I may.
Yeah, but having you in the studio, I can't but ask you the question personally. How many of them have you known personally? What is your impression of the Trump people? What kind of men and women are they in terms of his team? And so how does the chemistry and the personal equations, how do they pan out for you when you were there as ambassador and even otherwise? I mean, how much do we know them, let's say?
So, Pankaj,
And how well do we know them?
You are very right. I mean, a large number of them one has known during one's time there. And look, cabinet, as many of the senators have said, is the prerogative of the president.
Sure.
Because ultimately, the buck stops with him.
Sure.
So he has to deliver, and there is a general belief that he should have his team. I think the two most prominent here I will mention, and I will give you the context also. Secretary of State Rubio, 2020 June, we had certainly not invited the Chinese to our border. They were there, and I had gone across to brief him because he has very strong positions.
He was a senator at that
He
time.
was a senator.
Yeah.
The senator.
Which committee?
He actually he was the ranking member of the Intel committee at that time. He's also been part of the foreign affairs, and so I had gone to brief him. And after that, he put out a public tweet, standing with the people and government of India against the aggressor. And I think not many were coming out. And so that's one part. Mike Waltz, again, he's somebody who served in the US military. He has exposure. He has seen Afghanistan and some of these areas. I have had a wonderful experience with him as congressman from Florida. And he also became the co-chair of India Caucus, and that got me even more to deal with him. But on national security issues, even then, if you see his statements, especially relating to India, and you will see a number of times he has spoken on that. So I have a good and fond memory of that. So these two are definitely important. Kash Patel, incidentally, was part of Trump's delegation, which came here.
Oh, I see. To Ahmedabad.
To Ahmedabad. He was delighted to go back to Gujarat. His roots come from there. But he was also part of the team here. He was a very close aide of Steve Miller, who is now the Deputy Chief of Staff.
Right.
And I very clearly remember him here. And he did have a good introduction with Prime Minister Modi at that time.
No, and what about his economic team? I mean, did you have contacts with any of them at that time?
So you recall the name of Bob Lighthizer.
Of course.
And I think his own chief of staff is going to be the next USTR. I think yes, we did interact with the economic team, and the economic relationship is going to be challenging, but that's where the opportunities arise.
Yeah. But what about Elon Musk? and the others?
In 2023, when Prime Minister Modi came on the state visit, he had a good interaction with Elon Musk in New York. So I think I don't have to say much about Elon Musk. I think so much is written.
Yeah.
He's a very interesting guy. And I just have been reading, I'm sure like you, that Tesla is making
Yeah.
its foray
Yeah.
into India.
But I can't, now that you're talking, and I have to slightly divert from our script. What you're saying, makes me ask the question that over time it seems that Indian ambassadors, the kind of access, and particularly in your case, we've had or you've had to the White House, to the higher echelons of Congress and the other departments, is very different today than it used to be in the past. You've served with, as a young officer, with so many other Indian ambassadors, and you yourself were the ambassador. So, if you compare over the 10-20 year period, from what you're saying, I don't know whether we've had such kind of access to senior functionaries in the past.
So you are absolutely right, Pankaj. You have been there as a junior officer. I've been
Yeah.
there as a junior officer. I remember Naresh Chandra as a mountain of an ambassador.
Yes.
And I remember Under Secretary Pickering,
Thomas Pickering.
yes, coming to India House. And we were very excited. It was a rare occasion, but an Under Secretary coming was a big deal. And contrast to that, several of my dinners which I hosted, several of public events, we have had top cabinet officials coming and speaking. So definitely, this has been evolution of the relationship.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned to you that the relationship with the United States is very special, no doubt. But like two democracies, it has its challenges. It's never an easy one.
Yeah.
And that's why those challenges at all the times need to be converted into opportunities.
Especially in the last few years of the Biden administration, when you were in Washington, there were lots of bumpy spots and bumpy rides that we were having with the Biden people on human rights, on assassination allegations, on interference, on all those kinds of things. So that was also part and parcel of the relationship.
So Pankaj, as you know, that Democrats and Republicans have a different
Yes.
support base. So that is why some of the issues which each one takes can be different. But as I mentioned to you that actually I'm a great believer in this relationship because it serves us both. And this relationship has actually moved over to becoming a partnership. And that's what I witnessed in my time.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think we have to keep in mind, and this is true of American decision makers too. I would again and again underline there that we must keep the bigger, broader picture in mind.
Would you say that because of all our efforts of our diplomats and our whole machinery and all, there is a better understanding in Washington, D.C. about India, generally speaking?
So I would say certainly it's better than what was 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But, these are the days of social media.
Yes.
And information, disinformation can go very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's very important to have a regular reach out. There's no time we can sit back and say, well, we have arrived. Because in the complicated world today, I think constantly we need to keep that in mind and ensure that the correct message is out there.
Correct. And so that brings me to the next part of the discussion. It's a nice way to transition. The fact that Prime Minister Modi was in the White House within a few weeks of the new president, again, that's not normal. And to be received and to actually then not only just have a visit, but also have a long, lengthy, meaty joint statement How do you read that? Your views?
So I would say, I think that is significant. There's no doubt within the first 4 weeks and to be in the first four leaders, uh, it's very significant. It points to the importance of India. It also points to the chemistry between the leaders, which plays a part in resolving issues.
Yeah.
I would say the focus is to actually bring the two relationships together, and as they say, crease,
Yeah.
are in the crease,
Correct. Correct.
as
Correct.
they say.
Correct.
So that is certainly significant, and it was important to go there and underline
Mm.
the broad relationship or partnerships. And I think I would see it in the larger perspective because, as you have correctly pointed out, if we look at the joint statement and also some of
Yeah.
that a roadmap has been laid out for the officials to get on the job and start sorting out. It's certainly not going to be easy, but there is a roadmap. So any of these areas, you look at the joint statement. It contains defense, it has trade investment, it has energy security, it has technology innovation, it has multilateral, it has people-to-people cooperation. Actually, uh, the famous five areas I used to always point out, those are very much laid out. But in each of these, there is an action that has been laid out, and
And
that needs to be taken
a
ahead.
time frame also.
Yes, and that needs to be taken. Uh, this time, it looks they have an eye on the time frame, and my basis is on some of the statements that have come out, and including, as you have pointed out, in this document itself, it very clearly contains.
Clearly contains. So, in a sense, it's a blueprint for the next 4 years. It's a good way to begin this current term of the president. And also, of course, our own government is running up to 2029. So, for the next 4 years, we seem to have a template which is good. But what struck me was the fact that defense and security was the first paragraph, literally, of this joint statement. So you came straight to the defense, strategic, security, technology elements of the relationship, which is typically a very ambitious way to approach any bilateral relationship. Uh, so, what do you think we can expect on the tariffs front? Everyone's talking about the whole tariff, intersection between India and the United States and economic.
So, Pankaj, first, the general. I know there's been a lot of speculation on tariffs, and there are statements. It's not a phenomena limited to India.
Yeah.
It is a wider phenomena.
Yeah.
So that's my first thing. Second, as I pointed out to you, that there is a domestic context. And the domestic context is based on the perception. Again, I'm not getting into whether it's right or not. Time will tell us on that. But there's a perception that there is an imbalance. Many of this trade is more in favor of these other countries. We are only 40 billion. In that sense, we have a surplus, but that's much less compared to many of the others. But it's rooted in that. And for the domestic audience, President Trump and his team are sending a message that either we are able to balance it out, and as they have shown in many countries, including some part with India too, or we will put tariffs, and tariffs will bring more revenue into the country.
Correct.
And make your lives more comfortable. Now, that's a bit subjective matter because there is another viewpoint which says that it can long term empower the trade. Now, that part has still to be, it's still a part of a strategy. And I think, so coming to India, and as you specifically asked, so I think what is significant is that, again, this will have to be in the larger context. And that's why this visit was very important, apart from all the symbolism which we spoke about.
Correct.
That it's important to point out to President Trump that this relationship has many dimensions. So you can see in this joint statement, there is a talk of energy.
Yes.
Now, we require energy. We have such high demands.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think United States is becoming one of the bigger energy producers, and it also is moving into export zone. Now, during Trump 1.0, we had started the imports of LNG. So there is talk of LNG, there's talk of nuclear there. So that's one part. The defense part, as you are aware that we have a 10-yearly defense program starting way back in 2005. And that finished in 15. That 15 finished in 25. So the time was very appropriate. And within that, there is a mention of specific projects that can be undertaken. And there is also symbolism of F-35.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into the purchase of it. They are, as Foreign Secretary has clarified. But the symbolism is that there is trust between the two sides. As we speak of strategic and defense relationship, this is an important part. And similarly, some of the other areas too. There is a requirement for many of India's industry houses wanting access to US market.
Of course.
So it's a two-way process. And
course.
this time around, I think there is a mention in the joint statement about Indian investments in United States,
correct.
which often we tend to forget. So that's why this is a more wholesome document. And it was important that Prime Minister has that early meeting, and it's brought to the memory or the ears of the president that this is a much more wholesome relationship. Even education and knowledge partnership. Look at that document. It actually talks of the Indian students. There are 300,000 plus Indian students studying in different US universities, and they bring a certain $1 billion, which has been pointed out. But even more important, 2/3 of these kids are in STEM areas. So there is an acknowledgement that these kids bring value and competitive edge to the US economy.
Absolutely.
So that's why this is, as you rightly said, it's a very interesting
And also
topic.
technology. I mean, we didn't discuss that, but
Sorry, how could I forget technology? Technology is actually the driver which has brought this relationship into a partnership. Now, technology, and especially new emerging technologies, and I would be failing in my duty if I don't acknowledge the role which the Biden strategic team played there. They understood it. This actually started in Trump 1. But it continued and went whole hog. The ISET program, which was started, the new emerging technologies, the critical technologies, quantum, etc. In fact, you have just had Microsoft putting out the vast expanse of quantum, and Elon Musk has commented over it.
Correct.
Now, artificial intelligence, these are some of the areas.
These are the big...
And that partnership, again, is very, very important. We have a new parlance under which this
trust.
This cooperation will continue, but actually deepen. And therefore, this interaction was an important platform where ambitious targets could be set. And we are getting into that. So certainly technology is a very critical element in our relationship.
And the trade turnover has been pegged at 500 billion. That's what the statement says.
Yes, but Pankaj, as I have said, different parts will add up to that too. We have to keep in mind. Certainly it should be ambitious, and why not? I mean, two important democracies and two important countries, especially with so much of skills.
Let me now turn to the third part of the discussion. So the Prime Minister went, we just discussed solid outcomes. And within a few days, the world seems to have been turned on its head by President Trump. And today, the headlines and the news channels are full of Ukraine, Russia, Europe, and China somewhere lurking behind. I want to hear from you what you think of the developments of the last few days when it comes to, the new capital in town, which is Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the Europeans, the Munich Security Conference, repeated statements on Ukraine, on Russia. What's going on?
So let me start from the one side comment which you have made about Saudi Arabia. You know that during Trump 1.0, he had a special relationship with UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the Arabic countries. So to an extent, it's a continuation, but I certainly acknowledge the significance of what you have said. To host the meeting there certainly has sent a message, and I think very few international experts will miss that. You're also absolutely right. Every day in the morning, one has to see the communication channels to actually see what new is coming. Now, my assessment may be a little off what generally what commentary has been coming, but I will again bring you back that perhaps it's also some part of the strategy, not completely. It's Trump. Trump is Trump. And however, if you look at his campaign and you also look at his announcements, there is a certain perception he has of international situations. He has commented on the Middle East. He has commented on Russia and Ukraine. There has been history of his relationship with President Zelensky. There's been history of his relationship with President Putin. A lot has been commented on that. So if you keep all that in mind, then perhaps it may not be as shocking. But nevertheless, I think all the commentators are absolutely, you are right. They are, there is. And look, the pronouncements of the vice president, the pronouncements of the defense secretary I'm talking of Ukraine, Russia, and finally, the pronouncements of the president have certainly jolted. But I would say still that it's very early. I think this was one of the promises which he gave out, and there is pressure on him to deliver on that too. And for his home audience, he's certainly, and you can constantly see in his statements, he's talking about billions of dollars, US dollars, taxpayers' dollars being spent there. So he's also sending a message to them that by undertaking these activities, he's actually going to stop that and perhaps use them for domestic, if I can put it
Sure. No, it seems to me that we're going to see a lot of big changes in the coming weeks and months in terms of how he arranges his relationship with Europe on the one hand, the transatlantic, and then with Russia. And, he keeps saying this war should never have happened, and it would never have happened under my watch. And it is a war we must put a stop to. So it appears that in the next very short time, we will see something happening, including a meeting between the two of them, Trump and Putin. And so I want your thoughts on that. But then I also want to ask you about how this fits into his China strategy, which is, again, something that he has spoken of. And as you mentioned, Rubio and others who regard China as the preeminent challenge.
So, Pankaj, first, the Russia-Ukraine tangle, it's certainly had an impact on the international economic situation. There's no doubt about it. It's created a lot of complications, and I know as ambassador of India to the United States at that time, certainly I faced
you were in the hot seat.
A lot of questions on that. So there is that angle which will perhaps to an extent ease, hopefully. But I think I mean, if you look at the statements of Secretary of State and the NSA
Mm-hmm.
after the talks and this
Yes,
thing, they
yes,
have
yes.
very clearly pointed to the fact that negotiations would take place and its initial outreach.
Mm-hmm.
And they have pointed out that outreach has to happen to all.
Yeah,
So this is perhaps some part of the homework which is
yeah,
being done.
yeah,
And look, I'm being very careful.
yeah,
Somebody can throw out
yeah.
statements. I would say that let's wait till what the solutions come than what statements are being made.
Correct.
Because I don't want to derail from the real
Yeah.
process. I think actually, if between the lines you read even President Zelensky's statements, somewhere he mentions about the resolution.
Hmm.
I mean, ultimately, give and take, as they say, in every negotiation has to take place. Now, where will it end is something. But one thing, certainly, I think the world is pretty unanimous in coming together is to stop
Stop.
the war.
Yeah,
And that has brought a lot of misery on all sides.
yeah.
So I think perhaps there looks to be some hope that that part will stop and then they will start talking.
So once
Now,
he disposes of that, let's say, item on his agenda, the checklist which he had, do you think he's going to now shift gears after that to China or?
so, Pankaj, I was going to come to China. I think China is a very interesting relationship as far as United States is concerned. And here, uh, permit me 2 minutes to also give a broader, dimension within United States. There are pressures which President Trump will also be mindful of. Now, first and foremost is there is a public opinion in United States about China. And, if we look at COVID and even you look at the statements by the new CIA chief,
Yeah,
and here I may softly add that if you look carefully into President Trump's pronouncements, he deep down holds COVID responsible for his not getting re-elected at that time. And if we look at February of 2020, the
yeah,
opinion polls at that
exactly.
time when
Yeah,
he had come to India,
correct.
at that time, certainly he was
Yeah,
leading in
yeah,
the public opinions, and President Biden was nowhere in the
no,
democratic scene
yeah,
at that stage. So uh, that's one part of it. The second part is some of the people, like you have pointed out, Secretary Rubio, Waltz,
Waltz, yeah,
and some of the other
yeah,
people who are in key positions are known to have very strong China statements,
correct,
positions.
correct.
So that's one angle which will play in. But there is a third angle, and that is the business angle. There are strong business influences which want normalization of relations with China so that the business can further deepen. Now, these are the different pressures which President Biden will face.
President Trump.
Sorry, President Trump will face. It's a slip of tongue. Uh, how he does that, how he balances it, I think, is something that will emerge. And also look at Quad. The first meeting of Secretary of State was with Quad leaders,
Yes,
with India,
yes.
with us. In the joint statement, there's a mention of that. So all these aspects will play some role.
And he's already had a conversation with President Xi Jinping
Yes, he has had a conversation, and
on the phone.
and he has subsequently also said that he has a great relationship with him.
Yeah,
But he has also acknowledged that I'm a president of United States and he's a president of China. Now, each one of us have to look after our core interests. So that's why I am only pointing out that this is going to be a fascinating relationship. And it will have its pros and cons. It will have its pressures. But where will it settle? I would not. I mean, there is an interpretation even on some of his Russia pronouncements.
Yeah, sure.
That
Sure.
this has also got to do with China relationship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
therefore, I
In
would
fact,
say
I would like to take your, but this. He seems to like to take the bull by its horns, if I can use that word. I mean, he's talked about meeting Putin, about meeting Xi Jinping, about drastic reductions in defense budgets between the Americans, the Russians, and the Chinese. So he's not wasting time when it comes to addressing the core issues and kind of trying to upend traditional wisdom.
yes, Pankaj, but he's also meeting President Macron.
Yes,
He's
yes,
also
yes,
meeting
yes,
the
of course.
British Prime
But that's not
Minister.
news, right? These are his allies.
Yes, So the point I'm making to you is that look, I think interactions are very important, and certainly his meeting will Putin will come
Do you
soon
think
enough.
there is an element in his Russia strategy of one eye on the Russia-China relationship and an attempt here to
Look, we have not
wean
we have,
Russia away from?
we have not seen that in a statement, but I would I mean his team and he and here is an experienced president. I would certainly not rule it out. So that's why I said that his relationship, his management of the relationship with China would certainly be fascinating to say the least.
Fantastic. That's great. So I think it's a great conversation, Taranjit, but I just can't help ending with a completely different issue and ask you, how has your transition been to public life, to fighting an election, to interacting with the people of your constituency, and starting a different life?
So Pankaj,
A little bit about that. I mean, going back to Punjab and walking the farms and the rural areas and talking to people. How does it all feel? And what are you contributing to the state and to the domestic agenda in India?
So, Pankaj, firstly, I would say that it's been a very educative experience. And I would not say that it's an easy transition. Certainly, it's not. And I don't think I am nowhere near uh, a typical politician, who can. But I don't know whether Punjab and Amritsar at this time requires typical politicians because, one of the very, very sad part about, and here I can speak about Amritsar, is that the situation there, economic, law and order, drugs, employment, youth, it's very, very dire. And I think if somebody misses that, it's just wearing blinkers. I think to an extent, the fact that the youth
Yeah.
has been spending 35, 40, and now I'm hearing even 70 lakhs is something which should certainly
Yeah. On trying to
yes
yeah.
get us to think that it's very important to channelize this energy into using, like for Amritsar, I would say into Amritsar. And then there are a lot of potential there. I mean, case of Amritsar, 150,000 visitors visit every day. And on the weekends, it becomes 2.5 lakhs, 3 lakhs. So look at the potential.
Yeah.
I mean, here we can have startups in tourism.
Yeah.
It's a huge, and Amritsar also grows all kinds of vegetables and things. So I spoke about it, and I've been very regular in my campaign talking about it. Now, look, at the end of the day, the people are the sovereign; they vote. But I think the fact that just within 1.5, 2 months, I got into a competitive this thing
Exactly.
at a time
Yeah.
when there was a very active farmers agitation going on, and one of the leaders comes from my constituency. Also, one of the old alliances with the Shiromani Akali Dal did not take place. So these challenges were there, but still, I think another 24,000 votes and one would have been through. So it's been an experience, but one is not leaving it there. There is a interesting group of NRIs in United States, particularly doctors who studied in Medical College Amritsar. They are continuing an exercise what is called Vikshit Amritsar, which
Okay.
they have come together, and that money is being pooled, and MOU has been signed with IIM Amritsar.
Okay.
Now, this, of course, may be information
Yeah.
for you that there is an
Yeah.
IIM Amritsar. Now,
Yeah.
that, it has to work according to up to its brand. And there are three areas we are working with them. One is in the startups, that is the youth from Amritsar. Already $250,000 has been collected by these doctors and has been sent to them.
Good.
So that's one part. Second is the drugs
Yeah.
and rehabilitation in the drugs. That's a huge, major problem.
Yeah.
And the third is what is Safai, the cleaning
Yeah.
of Amritsar.
Cleanliness.
So it's a fascinating developmental aspect which one used to hear in our career. One would always speak about it, but actually I'm getting to see that.
No, that's fantastic, Taranjit. I mean, the fact that you're right down in the ground zero, in a sense, contributing to the daily lives of and trying to find solutions. So I wish you all the best. And you're young. I mean, given global standards of political public figures. So I wish you all success as you go along. But thank you very much for coming in and for this, broad discussion on so many different issues. And I wish you all success. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much, Pankaj. It was wonderful, and I
Yeah.
think we had a interesting conversation of a fascinating situation, which
Yeah.
is emerging. And thank you for all that compliment. You know, the white beard, I'm not that young, but certainly I have the energy of the young. Want to do things, and thank you for your good wishes. We'll rely upon you.
No, I think Punjab needs fresh faces. It needs fresh ideas, and it needs fresh blood. So, and the fact that you've seen so much of the world, you can bring some of the best practices and so on. But thanks a lot, and all the very best, Terry. Thank you. Thanks. a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
thanks.
Pankaj.
Dear listeners, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. As you have seen, we've covered a vast set of discussions and topics, starting from the United States to the Trump administration to India-US relations, and of course to the global situation, and finally about a bit about the politics in the Punjab. Do stay tuned for our further episodes, and thank you so much for having patronized us and for joining us. Till we meet again, namaskar.